Okay. All right. This thing is recorded. Welcome. And who are you?
Trey, I'm Dan Schmitt. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Welcome, Dan. So, when was the last time you rode?
Yesterday,
What'd you do?
I did a ride from the west end of Henrico to Ashland.
Oh, nice.
So I'm just coming off hip replacement surgery about
Right,
7 weeks ago. So I got back on my bike 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
And did a 10-mile ride, and that seemed to be okay. And then I did like a 12-mile ride. These are all on the Capitol Trail,
Yeah.
just spinning the pedals.
Yeah.
And so I've been building up, and so yesterday was 37.
Okay.
And I'm a little sore today, but I feel pretty good. So
Awesome.
I'm very encouraged.
Awesome. So recovery is going well.
Great. Yep.
Awesome.
Fantastic.
So we're here to talk about the biking.
Right.
A little bit. How'd you get into riding? I know it's been a while.
Well, like most people probably, my dad bought me a bike when I was 7, an old beater.
Yeah.
I remember it was a black bike, used with big old fenders, and we lived on like a quiet neighborhood block. And he told me to sit on it, and no training wheels or anything, of course, and he just pushed me.
Yeah, right, yeah.
And so I took a left turn around the corner,
Yeah.
and barely stayed upright. Went one block, and I had to take another left turn.
Yeah.
And I went face down.
Really?
And I remember, because I was scraped up pretty good, jumping up and just running home screaming.
Yeah.
And so he got me back on the bike, pushed me again, and I think I made it all the way around the block.
Around the second time. Okay.
And from then it's been love. From
Yeah.
that point on.
Did you ask for the bike, or did he just brought you one? Kind of thing? Do you recall?
I think he just brought it home.
Okay.
He just brought it home, and then I think when I first started riding with any seriousness was probably in high school.
Okay.
I remember getting a 10-speed, my first 10-speed.
Okay.
From Dee's Bicycle Shop on Forest Hill Avenue.
Oh, it was here.
And,
okay.
Yeah, and it was purple.
Yeah.
And I'm a big Minnesota Vikings fan, which
Yeah.
they're purple. So as soon as I saw this bike, I had to have it.
Yeah.
And so I got the bike in high school and started riding it.
Okay.
And so from that point was when my riding.
Now, were you just
truly
like
started.
so in your high school you had this bike? Are you like just riding with friends? Are you just riding around town? Like what's your you just
Mostly riding by myself.
Okay.
I when I was a kid, I mowed a lot of grass, a lot of lawns, and I remember I think I appreciated the concept of compound interest from banks at an early age, because whenever I got that $10 or $15 cash in my hand,
Yeah.
I would jump on my bike and ride up Huguenot Road. It was about 2.5-3 miles to Citizens Bank.
Okay.
And I had a passbook savings account.
Yeah.
And I would deposit that $10 in my passbook savings. And I made that trip probably 5 or 6 times a week.
Yeah.
Because I would not let money sit at home.
Right.
I had to have it in the bank because I would see that
Right.
10 cents interest coming, 15 cents the next month. It's like, this is cool. That money's got to get in the bank. so that was most of my miles.
Okay. Financially motivated. Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's cool. Frequent trips to the bank. So you're riding in high school, some a bit, solo, right? Doing your own kind of rides. And where does it go like post high school? How does your riding kind of transform?
So from that point, from high school, probably from 11th grade on, it pretty much evaporated for 10 to 12 years.
Okay.
I was a basketball player.
Okay.
I was a high school basketball player. I was completely into basketball.
Okay.
And then I played at Randolph-Macon College for 4 years.
Okay.
And you know, had a nice career there. But you know, when you play college basketball, that's really about all you do.
That's all you do, yeah.
You know, other than study. And so the bike really took a back seat for that period of time. And then I worked for a year or two, and then went to graduate school.
Okay.
And so I remember having the bike with me in college, but didn't really ride it. I had it with me in graduate school, but really didn't ride it that much. And it was only after probably I got married and had a couple of kids.
Okay.
And I think I was probably 30 years old.
Okay.
When I thought, you know, I need to get back to some serious exercise.
Okay.
And then so I bought my next road bike from Rowlett's.
Okay. Yeah.
Bicycle shop on Staples Mill and Broad at the time. Fred was the guy who owned it.
Yeah.
And you know, I bought a Cannondale with 105 components. I just thought it was the slickest machine ever.
Yeah.
And so from about that time, when I was maybe 30, 32, that's when I started riding.
Okay.
And I've never really stopped since.
So when you're in your 30s, you've had a couple kids, married,
Right.
And you decide to get a bit more active.
Right.
Do you immediately say, did you try other activities before, or did you immediately go, I should do the cycling thing again? Did that seem like?
You know,
did you do running or?
I
badminton
played a
or
little
anything?
tennis.
Okay.
Some racquetball, but I always loved my bike.
Okay.
You know, I always loved. In fact, funny story. In high school, that purple bike.
Yeah.
I had a Polaroid picture of it.
Okay.
In my wallet.
Okay.
And I would show it to my buddies.
Yeah.
And I remember one of my close buddies pulling me aside one day and said, "Dude, you're supposed to have pictures of girls in your wallet, not your bike." He goes, "We're happy for you, your bike, but I wouldn't show that around."
I can see guys saying that for sure. Dude, why are you showing us your bike, man? Yeah, I can see that. So 30, try a couple other activities or consider them.
Right.
Did you already have a bike at that point in time, or did you immediately go in and get this Cannondale from Rowlett's?
Yeah, I went and got the Cannondale.
Okay, so you're like, I'm gonna do cycling.
Right.
Got the decent Cannondale.
Right. And I was living out in Montpelier.
Okay.
And so there were pretty good roads out that way to ride. And so I would go on these solo 15, 20, 30 mile rides.
Okay.
For the most part.
Yeah.
You know, it was all by myself, but it was just other than hitting the gym and lifting some weights, that the bike was my cardio.
That was the idea that you were okay. So you're doing these 15 mile, 20 mile rides, solo, right?
Right.
Solo. What were you taking with you when you were doing these rides? Were you in kit? Were you just like
No.
just out riding?
Well, you know, I probably did get my first pair of like padded bike shorts with a chamois about that time.
Okay.
And I remember getting a jersey from Rowlett's as well. Mm-hmm. But to say I was kitted out would be an overstatement.
Okay.
You know, very basic.
Okay. All right. I'm always curious to hear when people get their first kit,
Right.
Kind of thing. So you're doing the rides. At some point, you do get a kit. At this point, do you start doing group rides? Like how does it like move from just you doing 15? Like how did it change from 15 to 15, 20 mile rides
Right.
solo to kind of the next thing?
So I did those solo rides for a number of years.
Okay.
We ended up having 4 kids, and so most of my time was
Being a dad.
spent with them.
Yeah.
And my career at the time, and so I was really just getting out whenever I could, on these solo rides. Mm-hmm. And then a buddy of mine got a mountain bike.
Okay.
And so he convinced me to buy a mountain bike.
Okay.
And Poor Farm Park, which is in Hanover, right there next to Patrick Henry and Liberty High School, has got some pretty good mountain bike trails. And so I started mountain biking with him, and learning how to do that. That was, took a lot of falls, and but it was great fun.
Okay.
And I met some other guys.
Okay.
Doing that.
Okay.
And then these other guys had road bikes as well, and that really kind of became the genesis of kind of my riding group
with
at
others.
the time.
Okay.
I still ride with those guys.
Okay.
Today.
Nice.
In fact, all of them. We've been riding together for 30 plus years together.
Yeah, I was gonna say, what time are we talking? Like the early '90s here, or are we talking the?
This would have been early '90s. Yes.
Okay. All right. Okay. So you're doing some solo rides. Your friend, convinces you into the mountain biking.
Right.
And you start riding with some people, doing some
Right.
group rides here. Okay. Does it become longer? Do you start doing? I clearly know mountain bike rides are normally shorter.
Right.
But when you're riding with them, do you start riding longer distances than 15, 20 miles?
Yeah. So we start doing 30, 40, 50-mile rides together.
Okay.
And then at some point I discovered RABA, and joined RABA. And that was a game changer.
Yeah.
Because RABA it's such a fantastic organization, which you obviously know.
Yeah.
And you just meet so many people.
Yeah.
And there's so many opportunities to ride, and so that's when I began to start to do some group rides.
Okay.
The first ones were at Hanover Courthouse, and I met some really great folks, and then from there it really kind of took off.
Yeah.
Because I loved being in the groups, and I loved the feeling of getting stronger and getting faster.
Yeah.
And the social part of it is just almost the best part of it. Just because you meet so many really cool, fun people.
Right. Yeah, that's the part you don't think about the social, how much fun you're having with your friends out doing an activity. Do you recall your first like big ride? Were you just like doing the 30, 40, 50s? Or not that that's not a big ride, but
I've done so many big rides over the years. But one of the first big rides I remember was a Lake Anna Century, and it was put on through RABA, as I recall, and I remember that's the first time I met Mike and Kim Moore.
Yeah,
and it was a relatively small group. There was only maybe 15 or 20 of us, and we went out to Lake Anna. And I was hanging on for dear life, but it was just so cool.
Right.
And Mike, who was the strongest rider, of the group, and still is in many ways. He if somebody would drop off the back, he would go back and get him, and pull him back up to the group. And I remember thinking, who is this guy? This Superman.
Yeah.
And plus he was just a nice guy as well. But I remember surviving that ride and finishing, and just feeling so proud.
Yeah.
Because I was scared to death a lot of that ride that I was just going to end up being left in no man's land.
Yeah.
But Once I got back and realized, I actually did it. I hung on. And that was a great feeling, and it motivated me to say, this is what I want to do.
Yeah.
I want to do these big rides.
Yeah. I'm curious about that. With the first time, it's like, what am I doing? Why am I out here? Like doing the really big ride with people, and peer pressure has caused you to be out here.
It's like, what have I gotten myself into?
Right.
Did
I take a wrong turn?
Right.
So you do the ride, you come back. And so, you're clearly in the kit at this point. Like you're with a RABA ride, you're in the kit, your helmets and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
Okay. Um, that's how you got into the riding. That's how you group rides. Um, was that your first entry?
Um,
Because that's when you were
it
pushing
may
the limits there.
it may have been.
Okay.
It That's the first one I remember.
Okay.
And but I've done. I mean, over the years, I've probably done 150 to 200 centuries. So because I just like that, I like the long distance rides, and so it's been there've been a lot of them over the years, but that's the one I still have very clear memories of that one, and it could very well have been the first one.
Now that sounds like that was like an organized ride, but not quite an event.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Do you recall some of the first events you went to? Like you kind of registered, and there were hundreds of other riders. Or a large mass of riders.
Yeah, I think one of the first big rides I did was Mountains of Misery, aptly titled.
Yeah.
And I ended up doing that 4 times.
Yeah.
And but the first time I did it, it was just, I mean, that last climb,
Yeah.
which is about a 3.5 mile climb to the finish, is after 8,000 feet of climbing during the day, is a big test.
Yeah.
And I was doing the paper boy,
zigzag up the road,
zigzag across the road just to get up, but I made it, and it again, that feeling of accomplishment, of sticking to it, of not quitting, is it's very rewarding.
Yeah, right. Right, you push your body to a new limit, or not even to a limit, but you pushed it more and found out I can do a bit more.
That's right.
Did you prepare for that?
Well, I'm sure I did.
Okay.
Because it scared the
it's challenging.
It scared the hell out of me just thinking about it.
Right.
And so I'm sure I did. I did a lot of probably hill repeats.
Okay.
Like on the Three Sisters out in Hanover. I'd find big hills and just go up 15, 20 times.
Yeah, because we don't have any climbs here in Central in Richmond that
right.
would be comparable.
Not big ones, but there's a couple hidden gems in Hanover that you can get a good 3/4 of a mile climb. That will hurt you pretty good, especially if you do it over and over and over again.
Repeats. Yeah. So Mountains of Misery. What are some other like events that stand out that you've kind of done?
Well,
of any kind of.
So, I'd like to do the longer, harder stuff, and so I started mountain bike racing.
Okay.
Kind of early on, maybe a year or two after I started mountain biking. Somebody convinced me to sign up for a mountain bike race, and so I did that for a year, and then they introduced a category called the enduro class.
Okay.
And it's a 6-hour race, and it was and so as many laps as you could do in 6 hours.
Okay.
And I fell in love with that. It was like, okay, I'm not fast, but I don't quit.
Okay.
And I found that in the enduro class, 20-year-olds raced against 50, 60-year-olds. I mean, there was no age classification.
Yeah.
And I found, and they would put our age on our calf, like in with a permanent marker.
Okay.
And so there was an E on one calf, which meant enduro, and then the age on the other.
Okay.
And I remember, being older than a lot of them, but seeing their age, and I would pass them.
Yeah.
And that's pretty cool. That's pretty fun.
Right. Yeah.
That's pretty motivating. And so I really started embracing these kind of longer races.
Okay.
And I raced that enduro class for years.
Yeah.
And then, but then that got me into doing mountain bike races. the Shenandoah Mountain 100.
Okay.
I don't know if you've heard of that. It's
I've
a
not.
100-mile single track mountain bike race up near Harrisonburg.
No, I've not.
My
Yeah.
best time is about 13 hours.
Yeah.
And it's, I mean, you talk about a grinder, it's 10 to 11,000 square feet of single track. I mean, it's all day.
Yeah.
So I did that 4 times. And then I've done the assault on Mount Mitchell
Heard that one.
in South Carolina.
Does that one still happen?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. That one's still going. Mountains of Misery is not.
Right. That one recorded.
And then me and I organized a group of 4 other guys, and we did the Blue Ridge Parkway from end to end. We did that in 2002. We did it in 3.5 days, which I would not recommend, because we were averaging about 130 miles a day for the first 3 days, and then the last day was a short 86. We did it, but they were super long days. But that's what I've always liked. I've liked to be on my bike a long time and just push it, grind it, and.
So wait. So were y'all camping? Like, what was the?
No, we stayed at.
You had places to stay.
We had we actually had a buddy that went with us.
Okay.
He had terminal cancer at the time,
Okay.
and so he wanted to drive our SAG vehicle for us as kind of his last hurrah.
Okay.
And it was great to spend time with him, and he loved every minute of it. And but so we didn't have to carry our gear.
Okay.
And so at the end of the day, he would take us to like a hotel or a bed and breakfast or wherever, and then he'd drop us back off at the same point in the morning.
Nice. Okay.
So that was fun. But yeah, and then the other thing, I think in 1999, I just like to go out and ride centuries. I used to ride to Jamestown and back before the Capitol Trail was there.
Okay.
On Route 5 all the time.
That's okay. On Route 5. Okay.
I'd leave Ashland and go to Jamestown and back.
Yeah, I guess you take Route 5. Yeah. Okay.
But the Tour de France was always something that really got me excited.
Yeah.
And so the first Sunday of the Tour de France, I hopped on my bike and I put on a yellow jersey and I did a 100-mile ride. And so I told my buddies the next day that I did this ride, and they said, "Well, why didn't you call us? We would have gone with you."
Yeah.
So the next year we did it. I think we had 7 or 8 of us.
Yeah.
And we all put on yellow jerseys. It was the first Sunday of the Tour de France, and we did that ride. And then so the next year, it was I think maybe 14, 15 of us.
Okay.
And so this thing organically grew.
Yeah.
Friends of friends type of ride, totally grassroots.
Yeah.
And so I hosted this ride. It was called the Yellow Jersey Century.
Yeah.
For 13 years. And
Nice.
it was out of Ashland, and we ended up having police escort out of town. Randolph-Macon gave us the parking. There was no entry fee. There was no waivers. People tried to convince me that you got to get waivers signed.
Yeah.
Something's going to happen, but it never did. But it was totally grassroots.
Right.
And the last year we did it, I think we had about almost 300 riders, all in yellow. It was really cool. It was really fun, and my family did the rest stops. People donated drinks and bars and stuff. Totally grassroots. About year 5, I started saying, there's some good energy here.
Yeah.
There's no entry fees, so I would put a box up and say, you can donate to Livestrong, which was for cancer.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or you can donate to the Hanover Food Bank, or you can donate to any charity you want. And I just put like boxes up. I said you can put $5 in, you can put $100 check, or you could put nothing. It's fine.
Yeah.
In the last, and so the last year that we did that, I think I wrote checks for $26,000 to these charities. After that, total grassroots ride. It was so much fun. It was just so cool, and allowed me to meet a lot of Richmond riders.
That is awesome, particularly just as like you said, it's a grassroots.
Totally grassroots. Yeah, it was fun.
But it's it's interesting to see the momentum a thing has.
Right.
Particularly over time.
Right.
It's 13 years.
13 years. Yeah. And then life just got busy, and I was doing it all myself.
Yeah.
And I loved it. I loved every second of it. But it just got to be too much. And so in the last couple of years, we've kind of started it out again.
Yeah.
I think 3 years ago we had maybe 10 of us, and then so who knows? It might come back.
Things can come back around.
Things can come back around.
But yeah, I can see that getting, particularly if it's you and your family kind of, like I see that sounds like I could have got not quite out of hand, but like hard to manage kind of thing.
Right.
But
it was great. It was always we always went east towards Walkerton.
Okay.
And it was always flat. But it was in July. It was always the first week of July. So there's some great stories about heat exhaustion and all running out of water and there's some classic stories.
Have you ever had heat exhaustion? Have you ever been out on a ride and was like, this is too hot, like this, I shouldn't have done this, like this is too hot a day, or just too hot for me right now?
It's I've been pushed to the limit a number of times. I've never I don't think I've ever been in the danger zone. But I've done some super hot rides and tried to be smart about it in terms of I need to get in some shade or get some ice in the back of my neck or something like that. Okay,
all right. I'm glad you've had that thought of like, okay, I should take extra precautions.
Right.
Like this weather takes some extra precautions. On the flip side of that, how do you feel about riding in the cold? I assume you have.
I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a cold. If you ask my buddies, they would just shake their heads, and because I show up if it's 40 degrees. I'm in shorts and short sleeves a lot.
Oh yeah.
Oh man. And so I like cold weather riding.
Yeah.
And this time of year, everybody talks about being on trainers and so forth. And I used to ride a trainer all the time, and I'm kind of over it. I still have one, and I'll ride one if I have to, but put me outside any day of the week. And I'm from Minnesota.
Yeah.
So growing up in Minnesota, maybe that has something to do with it. But I don't wear any shoe covers.
Yeah.
I wear lightweight gloves. I'll maybe put some arm warmers on or a light jacket, but I do not get I don't get cold.
Yeah. Oh man, I wish that could be the same. I can handle the cold to a certain degree. Like 40 degrees, I'll show up for just about any ride in 40-degree weather. Once it's like below 40, then I'm like, I'm riding less. Like I need to be outside in the maximum sunlight kind of time when it's below 40, or I just don't go.
Right.
But
I'd much rather ride
in
cold weather than hot weather.
And I'm
by far.
Yeah. Yeah, I will take a 90-degree day anytime. I'm like, yep, I can handle the heat. It is just fine, but I don't want to be in the cold. But bless your heart that you can ride in the cold and not have to put on the extra layers of gear.
Right. But the mountain bike and the gravel bike are ideal for cold weather rides too. When the season gets colder and the weather gets colder, that's really an ideal time to hop on the mountain bike and the gravel bike, get in the woods, and so you're out of that nippy north wind.
Right. Yeah, and it's as people know, it's like it's more active. Like you're all the stuff is causing your body to be moved a bit more. We went to Bear Creek State Lake Park. This weekend. Was not happy about the temperature there at the start because it was below 40 or something at the start, and we had a hill right out of the parking lot, and I was actually quite thankful for the hill right out of the parking lot because immediately the blood's pumping And once we were rolling, I was like, okay, this is tolerable. Once we were rolling, still in the upper 30s. Either way,
Yeah.
you're not doing the event anymore, but y'all are still kind of riding. Last couple of years, y'all have been still doing the yellow jersey. Y'all still wearing the yellow jerseys, or y'all just okay?
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's a
staple.
That's a notable factor.
Okay.
Everybody has to be in yellow.
Okay, all right, which is fair. I'm just going to read some notes. Like you've done the MS ride a number of times. The Belgian waffle ride. What is that? I've heard this thing, but I keep
that's a cool ride. It's that's just outside of. Last year was the first year they did it on the East Coast. So it started in San Diego, and the San Diego ride. I think it's a 144-mile gravel ride.
Ooh, okay.
And they have one in. I think there's 4 of them now. But a couple years ago, they decided to come to the East, and so there's an East Coast Asheville edition.
Okay.
So I rode in the inaugural event, and
okay.
It was initially supposed to be a 120-some mile gravel race.
Okay.
And but because of flooding in the area, they had to reroute it. It turned out to be 105 miles, 106 miles, which is still
right,
enough.
Still a lot.
It's still enough
right.
Because it was like 12,000 feet of climbing. So it was a long day, but the pros show up. You see some very impressive gravel riders.
Yeah.
Some ex-pros show up. Bobby Julich, who was in the Pro Tour. George Hincapie.
Mm-hmm.
Some of those guys were there. It was just cool.
Awesome.
It was cool.
But I saw that was a ride that you had done. And because I'm just going to crash into it, the big bike on the trail.
The big bike.
Yeah. Because it's a staple. Tell me the story here with the big bike.
Yeah. So the big bike is a fun story. A lot of us here in Richmond that ride the Capitol Trail, have memories of where the big bike was. It was on Route 5 across from the 7-Eleven, just when you get to the top of the hill coming out of Richmond.
Mm-hmm.
And the guy who built it, his name is Joel. He built it as he's a very talented welder, obviously, and has an artistic, creative side. But he built that to celebrate the Capitol Trail and the World Championships coming to Richmond. And so he just decided, he had all this scrap metal, so he built this bike, and it was in his front yard, across from the 7-Eleven. But it wasn't painted; it was all rusty. It was you really couldn't see it that well, unless you were looking over there. And so I rode by that thing hundreds of times, and I always thought, boy, that's an exceptional piece of art.
Yeah.
It just needs a better home. It needs a better place.
Yeah.
And so one day I put a note in his mailbox, and I said, you might think I'm nuts, but I have a vision for your bike. I said, here's my number. Call me if you have any interest. And so didn't hear anything. I really didn't expect to. Mm-hmm. And about 10 days, 2 weeks later, I get a call from him, and he said, I got your note. Your timing is impeccable because we just sold our house and we have no idea what to do with this bike. And I said, perfect. I said, here's what I want to do. I'd love to buy it from you and then move it to a great place on the trail. Mm-hmm. And so we agreed. I bought the bike, I think, for $600.
Really?
And I had a company come and pick it up, and they took it to their shop.
Yeah.
And they did some welding on it, to shore up some welds, and and then I had they sent it to a painter.
Yeah.
And then I painted our company logo on the top, which is H.H. Hunt.
Yep.
And then painted the Henrico County logo on the down tube, and then the Capitol Trail Foundation on the seat tube,
Yep.
and painted it white, and put the World Championship rainbow
Yep.
stripes on it.
Seems, yep.
And then in the meantime, I had called the Capitol Trail Foundation and Henrico County and said, look, I've got this phenomenal bike. You know, I'd like to paint it and make it a great piece of art and donate it to the county and the Capitol Trail. And they both just jumped at it.
Yeah.
And so we found a spot in 4 Mile Creek Park.
Yep.
And so that's how it landed there. And there's a nice plaque on the.
I see that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's called the Big Bike. That's what Joel, the founder, called it.
Mm-hmm.
And but we had a big unveiling. You know, when we installed it, we had a lot of people out there, and Joel and his family and his wife came, and we pulled the blue tarp off of it, and it was fun.
Oh.
You know, it was. But every time I go by that, it's just a fun thing, you know. And I've got a couple buddies that have accused me of a lot of lame brain ideas over the years. Most of them have to do with long rides. And every time we go by there, this one friend of mine, Jim Lesh, he always says, "That's the only good idea you've ever had." And so at least he thinks that was a good idea.
That was a good idea. This hands, I agree with you. And I pulled up a picture because I've been by there. I've taken pictures of it. And I'm trying to remember if I can't remember whether I rode past it when it was at its prior location or whether I drove past it at some reason. So what year did it actually move to the 4 Mile Creek Park, the trailhead there?
Oh, it's been there. I want to say, I know the date of the dedication was October 25th. The year was, it was probably about 5 years ago.
Okay.
So maybe 2017, I'm going to guess.
Okay.
2017 or 18, I would be pretty sure.
Okay. All right. Because that's when I started riding. Was 2017.
Right.
Okay. All right. Cool.
Right.
I was curious about that.
Yeah. Well, and the other kind of fun thing with that was Joel. I told Joel what I was going to do with the bike. I was going to take it and paint it, and put my company logo on it and so forth. And he said fine. And so then when it was at the shop, he called me one night, and he said, "We got a problem." He said, "My wife is very upset that you're going to paint the bike because it basically changes my art." And it was like, I said, "Joel, this is. I told you what I was going to do, and it's already in process, and it's being painted." And he said, "I understand." He said, I was just wondering if it was not painting, it was a possibility." And I said, it really isn't at this point. And he said, "Okay, well, we'll just go with it." And so before the dedication, it was covered in blue tarps, and she was out there. And I walked over to her and I said, "I understand you're not too happy about this." She goes, "No, I'm really disappointed that you painted the bike." And so I said, "Well, I hope you like it." And she said, "Well, it is what it is." And so we did the dedication speeches and all that and pulled the blue tarp down, and everybody cheered and clapped and stuff. And so I walked over to her and I said, "What do you think?" And she said, "I love it." which I just went, yes,
right,
yes.
Yeah.
Now it's a success.
A good idea. That's great that she wasn't mad about the bike being. What color was it before?
It was rust.
Rusted. Rusted. Okay.
Yeah, it was all different colors of rust, steel and rust.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah, then I get the argument of not painting. But either way, it's been
Right.
painted. It's in place.
Right.
Everybody gets to celebrate going down the trail and taking a photo there. So, despite that, either way, thank you for doing that.
Yeah.
Clearly gives people fantastic memories. I've taken pictures by there several times with friends, and people passed it and I thought about it. So either way, I'm glad it's there.
Yeah. It was
Thank
fun.
you.
It was fun.
Your one good idea. So, when does bike packing happen? When is your first bike packing excursion? I know that might be in the
my
past.
first official bike packing was maybe 3 or 4 years, maybe 3 years ago.
Okay.
3 years ago.
Okay.
I got we got a new puppy
Okay.
about 3.5 years ago, golden retriever.
You're like, I need to leave the house. Sorry.
And so, well,
Sorry.
so you know, I love my golden retriever. You know, it's a great breed. I've had a bunch of them, but so I thought, you know, when I go on my bike packing trips, I want to be able to take my dog.
Okay.
Cooper.
Okay.
So I went out and I found a used Burley bike trailer, and I taught Cooper, you know, to you know, as a puppy,
Yeah.
you know, to jump in and jump out. I mean, he'll do anything for cheese.
Yeah.
And so it was very easy to teach him to get in and out. And so so my first trip was about a 35-mile bike packing trip, dog bike packing trip,
Yeah.
with Cooper on the Greenbrier River Trail
Yeah.
in West Virginia, and it was great. And I just packed the trailer with the sleeping bag and the tent and all that, so that there was still like a platform that he could jump on top of that and ride when he got tired.
Yeah.
Because he would run for 2 miles and then ride.
Okay.
And then I'd just say, Cooper, hop up, and he
just hop right in.
just hops in.
Nice. Okay.
And then I drag him for a mile or two. He starts barking, and then he jumps out. You know, and he'll do that all day long. But it was just so great to get to camp at night, put your tent up, make your fire, and your dog is laying next to your campfire with you. And it's just like, it doesn't get any better than that. So that was my first bike packing trip with him, and then my buddies, and a lot of them, Keith Van Ingewind and Jan Waldron and Dan Gerard and Ken Ashworth and Andy Kepke. They started talking about doing a real bike packing trip.
Yeah.
And so in Harrisonburg,
Okay.
like a 3-day, 2-night.
Ah,
So
yeah.
I said, I'll go with you. And but the only bike packing I had done was a trailer.
Yeah.
And so so I showed up with my trailer, and which was not one of my best ideas. But we had a heck of a time.
Yeah.
Andy Kepke had showed up with his trailer too.
Okay.
So I wasn't the only fool on the trip. And we spent 3 days and 2 nights in just a glorious part of the state.
Yeah.
Around Harrisonburg, and just had a heck of a time.
Wait. Had you camped before the dog packing trip?
Well, I grew up camping.
Okay.
And camped a lot with my kids and so forth. So
All right.
I was a Boy Scout. So
Okay.
so camping.
So that part.
Camping's
was
part of my.
Okay. You knew that part.
Yeah, yep.
So then you do the 3-day, 2-night Harrisonburg ride. What were your thoughts about? You like, this is great. Like, this is fantastic.
It was great.
Yeah?
It was really hard.
Yeah.
It was really hard. Yeah.
Because of terrain or because you brought the trailer?
Both. There was like those guys showed up with really nice like bike packing bags and nice gravel bikes and they had done more research and had more foresight than I did.
Yeah.
I just showed up like, okay, let's go. I've got my camping gear.
Right.
Not really bike packing gear. I got my camping, my regular tent and small cooler and just all that stuff just packed in my, rattling around my.
Right, in the trailer?
In the trailer.
Yeah.
And so hauling that trailer up some of those steep grades was tough.
Yeah.
And then of course we had two camp, both camps at the end of the day were at the top of big climbs.
Yeah.
and so they found ways to stash the beer in Andy and my trailer, and they would ride off. They did thank us profusely when we got up to the top.
Right.
Finally, with the cold beer, but it was a fantastic trip, and it's just it's great riding your bike all day.
Yeah.
And then setting a tent up, and starting a fire. It's great.
What time of year was that?
That was in the fall, I want to say.
Okay. Okay. Did you ever do any more bike packing with the trailer when it was not solo?
No.
Okay.
But I am, I do have some pretty serious plans this spring to
take it out again,
to get Cooper back out.
Oh, really? Okay. Nice.
So, he and I are going to do some trips together this spring together.
Okay. Awesome. I'm glad you were able to take your dog with you.
Yeah. He loves it.
Yeah.
He absolutely loves it, and he's so funny because, you would think letting your dog off the leash, and I think technically they're not supposed to be off leash on some of these rail trails, but he is. You talk about a focused dog.
Yeah.
I mean, there could be cats, kids, whatever, which he normally would be distracted by.
Yeah.
But when he's on a ride, he has his head straight forward, and it's like, I've got no time for anybody. We're on a mission.
Yeah.
And he absolutely loves it. And he just focuses on the ride.
I'm glad he's a well-behaved dog.
Mm.
I clearly wouldn't work with all dogs, but I'm glad that works with Cooper. So you've done this bike packing. You did this bike packing, and was that the fall of 2019? I'm under the impression.
I think so.
2019.
I think it was before COVID.
Yeah. Everything's before or after COVID at this point.
Right.
So did you do more? What was the next bike packing trip?
The next bike packing was my cross country trip.
Your cross country trip. Okay. All right. We're going to get to that.
Okay.
But because we've mentioned COVID, and I feel I have to ask everyone, and I'll say this for everyone listening.
Right.
I like asking about COVID because riding becomes so social, right? We're spending so much time with people. Yes, we're out moving, right? And then COVID happened, and then stay indoors. Don't be around people, kind of thing. So, how did the shutdown and COVID, the March 2020, how did that all impact your riding experience, if at all?
Yeah, it was a weird time because none of us really understood the virus and what it could do and couldn't do, and what was safe and wasn't safe. And so I remember in the first month of COVID and COVID precautions, going out with my buddies, and we said, let's ride 10 feet apart, because you still want to get out there with your buddies, because that's really what it's all about. Riding by yourself is okay, but riding with your buddies is really where it's at. Mm-hmm. And so it's hard to give that up. So we started to go out, and but then the guy in front of you 10 feet would sneeze, and you kind of go, oh, is that sneeze going to end up killing me? And but nobody really understood what was safe and what wasn't safe. And then people would look at you like, and we're wondering, are they looking at us like we're being irresponsible? It was just a weird time. And so we ended up doing that once or twice, kind of early in COVID. And then I think most of us just said, let's not do group rides. Yeah. And so most of us just did a lot of solo riding. Yeah. Which wasn't bad because, as the roads were pretty much empty. Yeah. And I'd ride in downtown Richmond. Yeah. A lot. Just ride through downtown. It was great. It was like having the whole city to yourself because there were no cars.
Yes, of the clearly terrible time, but that was great. Having no cars on the I definitely rode through the city a bunch during that time.
But I ended up putting a speaker, a Bluetooth speaker on my handlebar.
Yeah.
And I just, I'd go out in these long solo rides and, just listen to music.
Yeah.
And it was great.
Yeah.
It was great.
Okay.
It was just a different phase. It was another phase of riding.
Yeah. What'd you like to listen to while you were riding? Did you have anything you would like to listen to?
Yeah, I love country. So,
Yeah.
Zach Brown and stuff like that, something with a little beat to it. And
Okay. Country the whole time?
No.
Okay.
I mean, there'd be Grateful Dead in there. There'd be
nice.
There'd be oldies. There, some raps, Run DMC. I mean everything.
Okay. All right.
But something with some energy to it.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I was trying to.
That's the key.
Okay.
Yeah.
Something's gonna keep you moving.
Exactly.
So that's COVID, right? You survived COVID, right?
Yep. We did.
Figure out the group riding again. You're riding with people again. Okay, awesome. And then as we crash into this as well, eventually you do this like really long ride, this Transamerica.
Right.
What was the thoughts? Like, how was the planning? Like, because you didn't just like, I'm just going to go on this ride. I'll see you in like a month. Like, what was the planning like getting into this thing?
So the dream started really 25 years ago. I read a book called Kon-Tiki, and it's I got it at a Christmas party. It's one of those parties, kind of a dirty Santa where you kind of steal gifts from each other.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I ended up walking home with this book called Kon-Tiki, and it was about this incredible raft trip across the Pacific Ocean from Peru to the Polynesian Islands. And it was a 4,300-mile raft trip that these 5 guys took because one guy wanted to prove that the Polynesian Islands were settled by South Americans instead of Asians. And everybody said it's impossible. So he basically called his buddies. They quit their jobs. They went to Peru, built a raft out of 9 balsa logs with the tools that the ancient Aztecs would have used back then, and they put a sail on it, and they sailed 4,300 miles in 101 days, and actually made it. And everybody thought that they would never make it.
Yeah.
Certainly never make it there.
Yeah.
But they wouldn't make it, out alive. And it was just one of those books to me that was one of the greatest adventure books I've ever read. And so from that point on, Kon-Tiki to me was the symbol or word for adventure. Mm-hmm. And I always, from that point on, I said, that's what I want. I want an adventure like that.
Yeah.
Something like that. And so my Kon-Tiki was, I want to ride my bicycle across America, which is about the same distance, 4,300 miles, and about the same amount of time. It was like that's my Kon-Tiki. I'm going to do a land Kon-Tiki.
Yeah.
They did a water one, and so it's been on my mind for a long time.
Years,
and so,
okay.
But when you have a family and you have a career, it's hard to make something like that happen.
Yeah.
And so I just retired last December, and as soon as I retired, I thought, it's time.
Yeah.
Because time is the enemy. I used to say time is the enemy of all real estate deals. And because you have to make things happen, because the longer you wait, the less likely something is going to happen. And so I thought, well, time is the enemy of this trip. So as soon as I can go, I'm going to go, because if I miss the first year could turn into the second year, the third year, and it may never happen. So I talked to my family, because it's a big commitment.
Yeah.
Because I'm leaving for a couple of months.
Yeah.
And but I got their blessing. My wife said, yes, you need to do this. You've been talking about it forever. I'll support you. And we ended up making it a fundraiser for a nonprofit group here called Sportable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so we did this big campaign. What's your Kontiki? And the whole thing was amazing because we ended up raising a lot of money.
Yeah.
For them.
Awesome.
But so once I got basically the blessing from my family to go, then I started telling my buddies.
Yeah.
And that's the key. As soon as you tell your buddies you can do something, it's real. Mm-hmm. Because then there's accountability.
Right.
Then it's then there's no turning back.
Yeah.
I mean, there were times even a month before I was set to fly out to Seattle to start the ride that I thought, am I really going to do this? I mean, holy shit. I mean, this is bigger. Like, this is getting real.
Yeah.
But, when you get to a point where you've kind of put your stake in the ground, it's like, yep, we're doing this.
So, okay. So, where to go with this? So, what do you take with you? Let's go with that. Like, you decide you're going to go out to Seattle. So you take your bike, right? You take your bike, right. You fly out there. How do you figure out what to take with you? Let's go with that. How do you figure out what to take with you?
Well, I had no idea.
Okay.
But when we lived in Ashland, the other part of this too, when we lived in Ashland, which is right along the 76 bike trail, we used to, and the Trans-America Trail comes right through there.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And people, we lived right on the railroad tracks, and there was a guy that owned a bike shop who would host riders in their backyard. His name was Ron DeRoche, and he died unexpectedly of he had terminal illness, and so we used to see, from my front porch, I could see these riders, all packed up at the train station, and with their maps out, and, and I'd walk over there and said, are you guys looking for Ron's house? And they said, yeah, we are.
Yeah.
And so I had to tell them that Ron was
Ron passed.
Ron passed, and so we'd always invite them to our house, and so I learned a lot from them. We probably hosted 15 to 16, different groups.
Okay.
And so I saw how their bikes were packed and just heard their stories, and that, to me, that was what really solidified it, because we'd open a bottle of wine, make a big pot of spaghetti, and we sit around a table till midnight talking to them about all their crazy adventures, and it was like, that's like, I'm going to do this. You want to be on this. This is going to happen. But so that was one part of the education. But then the other part really is, YouTube is a phenomenal. Yeah, I watch so many YouTube videos on equipment and packing and stealth camping and just how to solve problems and Journeyman Adventure, which is a bike shop on 18th Street downtown in Chaco Bottom. Great bike shop, great resource. The bikes, the bags. Glenn is the owner, and he's a great resource, enthusiastic supporter, and so he helped me. But the YouTube videos and a couple of short shakeout trips.
Right.
I did a one nighter, and then a buddy of mine went with me for a 2-nighter. Okay. And you just kind of start to figure things out. And so I felt pretty confident when I left. Okay. That my bike was packed okay, and I could probably survive.
So you camped the most of 2 nights. It sounds like.
Yep, 2 nights.
Most 2 nights.
And
now you're gonna ride across the country.
Right across the country. Yep.
Okay.
So
all right.
Yeah. Don't you think you're ready after that?
Great segue. All right. So you land in Seattle.
Yep. Yeah. Okay. My wife flew out. So I shipped my bike out.
You shipped it. Okay.
With there's a great group called Bike Flights.
Yep. And Bike Flights. Yep.
So I had Conti's they did a phenomenal job, packing my bike for me.
Yeah, nice.
And the bike flakes picked it up, shipped it out, and then my wife flew out to Seattle with me. We met some friends that that live in Seattle that we met on a biking trip.
Okay.
In Slovenia 2 years earlier.
Okay.
So we spent some time with them, and then we went up to Anacortes, Washington, which is about an hour and a half away. And my bike was there. It was all put together, and so I just had to kind of reassemble all the bags to it and just start packing it. And the next day I set out east, and my wife followed me. Cindy followed me in a rental car for 2 days.
Yeah.
Yeah, just to make sure the bike was operating right, and she was going to ride with me. She was going to try to ride with me. We tried to figure out logistically, but she hit big mountain passes right off the bat.
Yeah.
And it was, I had 7 to 8 feet of snow at the top of the first mountain pass, and so it was. So she was probably happy to be in a rental car instead of in the bike. But she rode with me for she followed me for a day, basically a day and a half.
Yeah.
Just to make sure
everything's
working, that I didn't forget my tent or something stupid like that. And then she took off.
Yeah.
And seeing her taillights disappear around the corner, it's like. That was the moment. It was real. It's like, okay, all right, this is, the Kon-Tiki adventure starts right now. There's no net.
And how, so is that, I just wondered the feelings of you're setting out on this thing, and you got your wife with you for the first day and a half.
Right.
Like, are you nervous? Are you concerned at this point in time? Are you still thinking, I shouldn't do this, or I should do it, like this is a good idea, or was it just like all this is an adventure, I'm glad to be here kind of thing?
Yeah, it was more of that. It was more of this kind of holy shit, this is actually happening.
Yeah.
This is actually, I'm actually doing what I said I was going to do. And to say I wasn't apprehensive would be a lie.
Yeah.
I mean, it's because you're out there all by yourself.
Yeah.
And everybody's warning you about bears. You need to carry bear spray. You need to carry a gun. People warn me all the time about all the bad stuff that can happen, and which none of it did.
Yeah.
But it's you're several thousand miles from home.
Yeah.
On your bicycle by yourself, with nobody to call to help you.
Yeah.
And so, but that's really what I wanted. That's the experience I was looking for. I was looking for that type of just, you got to figure this out.
Yeah.
And it could go terribly wrong, or it could be
awesome.
It could be awesome, and it ended up being awesome, Trey. Like the whole thing was awesome. That's not to say there wasn't challenges along the way, because there was every day there's challenges with weather and mechanicals and wind and navigation and all that. But that was the fun part, just figuring it out and overcoming it.
Okay.
And
Okay. So you leave. You're on your bike. Your wife's left. Right. Taillights are gone.
Taillights are gone.
This is real. Yep. I'm doing this at this point in time. Did you have a route? Did you have routes to go all the way across country?
Yes, Adventure Cycling.
Okay.
Who created that first 76 bike route?
Okay.
The Trans-America route. It's a great organization, and they've done a lot of route mapping.
Okay.
And so I had 11 maps. I had 11 paper maps. They call them paper maps, but they're as much plastic as paper.
Yeah.
They're waterproof.
Yeah.
But it was the route I chose was the northern tier.
Okay.
That goes from basically it stays up across the northern part of the U.S. from Anacortes, Washington, to Bar Harbor, Maine, was the end point of my maps.
Okay.
And then I substituted 3 maps from the northern tier. It's called the Great Lakes option. So,
Okay.
so basically, instead of going south below the Great Lakes, I went north, up above and between the Great Lakes.
Okay.
Like through the through the Upper Peninsula. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And I think I rode it along the shores of the Great Lakes for almost 800 miles.
Yeah.
It's just phenomenal. Just phenomenal.
Wow. Okay.
But yes, so I had really good maps.
Okay.
The maps told me where the distances between certain points, where grocery stores might be, where where bike shops were,
Fantastic.
where I could find services.
Okay.
There was some great history on the maps.
Okay.
That I'd read in my tent at night, but the maps were superb.
Okay. As you were riding, did you have any goals that you were riding? Like clearly to get home, like it's a good main goal.
Right.
But like,
To
were
survive.
there any like daily goals or anything like that, or was it like I'm gonna get to my next destination, I'm gonna set camp, and then like I'm just gonna hang out and then go to the next day? Was there anything you were like, I'm gonna try to do this as I go? Kind of
Yeah.
thing?
So I had estimated, and I had talked to a couple of people that had done something similar to this. So I'd gotten some
foreknowledge, yeah.
right, some feedback from them, from their experience, and I had estimated about 50 to 60 miles per day.
Okay.
On a loaded bike would be reasonable.
Okay.
And but I just didn't know, and so I kind of had a 90 day, beginning to end.
Okay. Which projected,
right.
yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and I actually had a calendar that I went through, and I'd estimate where these different towns were that had services and so forth. So I kind of had a plan of I can get to this town this day, and this town the next, and this area the next. So I kind of had a big overview, which ended up blowing that out of the water.
Yeah.
Because I went faster than I thought I'd go.
Oh, okay.
In the end, I
slower.
averaged about 75 miles a day.
Okay.
And so, but I really didn't have at first I had a plan, but then out west, the towns are about 60 to 70 miles apart, and so so like when you're in Montana and North Dakota, there's one town that you can probably get to.
Yeah.
That's 70 miles away. So I would look at my map and say, okay, the next town is Lewistown or Gackle or whatever, and so that's probably where I'll end up. And and out west, that's kind of what happens.
Right.
Although one day I had a nice tailwind, and I ended up doing 140 miles
Okay.
in a day, and but then as you get further east, the towns are a lot closer, and there's more regular services, so you can really end up anywhere.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of what happened, which was fun because I rarely knew where I was going to end up.
Yeah.
And to me, that was the best part of it.
Yeah.
Just the not knowing where I was going to be, where my tent would be sitting, whether I'd be stealth camping behind a library or on a high school football field, which I did in Maine.
Yeah.
Or setting up my tent at 10 o'clock at night in the dark, on some ledge overlooking Lake Erie, because I wasn't supposed to be there. That was the cool part of is just kind of just figuring things out. And the spontaneity was like you'd crawl in your tent at night, like boy, this is cool.
Yeah.
I had no idea I was going to be here.
So you setting up the tent. You figuring out I'm going to camp. Okay. Okay. In the morning, did you make a decision about I'm going to stop here? Or did you just go by feel? I know as you said East Coast, you got closer to towns.
I typically I always looked at my map like the night before and had a kind of a general plan of if I can do 60 or 70 miles, this is a reasonable town. If I ended up doing 90, that's a reasonable town. If I ended up doing 120, that's a reasonable town.
Okay. All right. Okay.
So I kind of had
some understanding where you might be willing to stop. Okay.
Right.
Now you're camping. Like what's the situation you're okay, I think this is a good place to stop.
Right.
Like how does it go with like where are you going to camp? You figured you got to a place, okay, this seems like a good place as town to stop in.
Right.
Like how'd you figure out where to set up camp kind of thing?
So, my map had all my map had like little tent symbols.
Okay.
Where where I could find campgrounds.
Okay.
And so,
okay.
So I stayed in campgrounds a bunch.
Okay. Good.
And
okay.
They were I probably stayed in 15, 20 campgrounds.
Yeah.
And they were great. And sometimes they were, my tiny little tent would be between two massive RVs. And, I'd just be laughing like, boy, this is, they're looking at me like, they're shaking their heads. But they would still invite me over and sit around the campfire, and I'd have a couple beers with them, and it was fun. It was fun meeting people every day.
Yeah.
It was. I've told people that it was more of a people trip than a bike trip.
Yeah.
Because the people is what I will always remember the most.
Yeah.
The landscapes were amazing, but it's the people and the experiences I had every day from sun up to sundown with kind, generous, helpful people that sometimes rescued me. They took me into their homes.
Yeah.
They fed me. That was the really truly the coolest part of the whole trip.
Yeah. Because you weren't thinking about that. You were just your original plan was just you weren't thinking about, I'm going to get to see all these nice people or encounter, have these great interactions.
Yeah, I was thinking it was mostly going to be scenery and riding my bike and so forth, but it ended up being the most special part about it was the people that I met along the way.
Okay, all right. You mentioned people cooked for you. Did any meals stand out?
Yeah, so several, but I'll tell you one in particular. So my brother Paul. Ended up, he's 2 years younger than me, and he's a big rider as well. Mm-hmm. And he met me in Spokane. He lives in Las Vegas.
Okay.
So he rode with me from Spokane to Great Falls.
Spokane, Washington?
Washington to Great Falls, Montana, about 10 days.
Okay. Oh, nice.
And it was great. It was a great brotherly time. And we rode through Glacier together, and we rode through an incredible part of the country together, and just, camped along, just beautiful rivers and lakes. Mm-hmm. And it'll always be a very special memory for the two of us. But we were riding in the rain one day, pretty much all day in Montana, and it was a Sunday, and we get to this tiny little town. In Montana, the towns we stayed in, I mean, they were maybe 100 people. I mean, really small, yeah. Tiny towns.
Yeah.
Like no stoplights at all. Of course.
Okay.
There's just one bar and cafe. Maybe there's a small market. Was normally a little park where we could pitch a tent. There was a fire station. There was a library, and there was a little school, and that was it. And so we get into Dutton, Montana, on a Sunday night, just soaked to the bone. And nothing is open.
Yeah.
Like the bar or cafe that we really needed.
Yeah.
Like nothing was open. There wasn't a soul in town.
Yeah.
And so we found a little park and we set our tents up. And we looked in our little feed bags, and he had a pack of nabs, and I had a Snickers bar, and we had some tea. And I remember sitting there thinking, we could survive the night with this. I'll make some tea, and we'll just make these crackers last a while. And we're sitting there, but we're hungry because we've ridden 75, 80 miles.
Yeah.
And I said, "There's got to be something open." And so hopped on my bike and I rode back into town and
Yeah.
totally dead. And all of a sudden there's one truck comes through town. And so I flag him down. I said, "Excuse me, sir, is there anywhere we can find food within 5-10 miles from here?"
Yeah.
And he goes, "No." He said, "Not in Dutton, Montana on a Sunday night. There's nothing close to here." He said, "I got a bottle of water for you if you want it." And I said, "Thank you, sir. I'll take it."
Yeah.
And so he said, "God bless you, son. Good luck." So I go back. I told my brother, "I got a bottle of water. We're good." And so we're sitting there, drinking our hot tea, and our tents are up. It's still raining, and 10 minutes later, that same truck pulls in the parking lot.
Yeah.
And the guy gets out, and he's got an armful of food. His wife made us sandwiches. He brought us carrots and homemade pie, bottles of water. I mean, it was, he walked up to us and he said, "You're not going to be hungry in Dutton, Montana tonight." And he sat down with us. His name was Link. He was named after Abraham Lincoln. But he sat down with us, and while we ate, and he talked to us. It was magic. It was just one of these, like, this is so cool.
Right. Yeah. That is special.
Yeah. It was a regular bologna sandwich, but it was
amazing.
It was probably the best dinner we had.
Hunger will do amazing things, man.
That's right.
I'm glad you had that experience, right? Of I would say seeing the good in people, but that's kind of what it is. Somebody was like, I'm gonna make sure these people don't starve.
Right. Right.
Well,
and Trey, I'll follow up on that because I think that's one of the biggest things I learned is, I've always had a pretty high opinion of humanity, but this bike trip sent it to a whole different level.
Yeah.
From beginning to end, I interacted with so many people, and it was 100% good.
Yeah.
The kindness and generosity of people was just blew me away across the entire country.
Yeah.
And and then in my mind, I wasn't burdened with Democrats and Republicans and news and school shootings. I wasn't listening to the news and reading the paper. My mind was free of all the noise that we all deal with on a regular basis, and I had beautiful, wonderful, kind people to interact with every day.
Yeah.
And that's, it was just such a gift to live like that for 2 months.
Why do I have a job?
Right.
That is clearly, that is awesome. That is your meals, right? Clearly awesome interactions. The camping, you had knowledge of where to camp on your map. You had maps, which gave you routes.
Right.
Adversities, like what were some of the hiccups that kind of happened?
Yeah, so I got lost a couple times. Probably the biggest adversity was wind.
Yeah.
I had a lot of wind, storms. One night in Ashby, Minnesota, my tent. I was in my tent, and a storm hit at 11:30 that night, and it was nothing like I've ever experienced in my life.
Yeah.
Like I was on the edge of a 4,000-acre lake, and it was like a hurricane was coming off that lake, and I was laying on my stomach, holding the tent down to the ground because if I let go, I knew it would roll with me in it. And it rained as hard as it could rain, and my tent was totally flattened over me, and water was gushing in, and it was cold, like the water was so cold, and I just remember hanging on, just thinking, this can't last but for so long. And it lasted about 20, 25 minutes, I think, and finally it passed through, but I had about 6 inches of water in my tent, sleeping bag, all my clothes were underwater. It was bad. Trees had come down all around me.
Yeah.
A big tree fell like 75 feet from me.
Yeah.
That the locals, an hour later they were out there for an hour and a half, with chainsaws. But it was like my tent cords were ripped, my poles were bent. It was a serious storm.
Yeah.
And so I used my water bottle to bail my tent out. It took me like 15 minutes to get all the water out of my tent.
Yeah.
And set it back up. And I had a rain suit, pants and jacket that I'd been using that was still packed on my bike.
Yeah.
So I went and got that, and I put that over my wet clothes.
Yeah.
And zipped it all the way up to my chin, and crawled in my sopping wet sleeping bag, and I slept like a baby all night. because the plastic from the rain gear kept the heat in, so it actually ended up warming me up, and I was fine. But it was just one of those, but you just lay there, and it's,
you had no other options,
right? You're by yourself and you have this, but you just tell yourself, like I told myself, this is just part of the adventure. This is what I'm going to remember probably the most 50 years from now.
Yeah.
Or 40 years from now.
Right. Nothing. Clearly this is uncomfortable.
Right.
But I'll be fine.
But this is what it's all about.
Yeah.
This is the surviving and getting through is what it's all about. And the next morning, there were trees down everywhere. I got my tent up, and it's still windy as hell. And so I tied everything to, up so it would dry as much as possible. And then I got up, and there was a bike trail I was supposed to take for the next 40 miles, and I started, but there were trees down everywhere.
Yeah.
So I couldn't move on the bike trail, so I had to get out to the highway, and I ended up staying on the highway pretty much all day.
Wait, like not like 95 kind of highway,
no,
Staples Mill kind of highway kind of thing.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
But out west, you can ride on the interstate, and in North Dakota one day I rode. I rode probably 250, 300 miles on the interstate. With speed limit was 90 miles an hour.
Okay.
And I think it was I-70, but it wasn't as bad as you might think.
Okay.
The shoulder was probably 10 feet wide.
Okay, so you had room. Okay.
And I felt completely safe.
Okay.
One day in North Dakota, I think I rode 120 miles one day, on I-70 with a tailwind. So, and I was happy.
Oh yeah,
It was like this is a good day.
Yeah, tailwind. It's hard to give up a tail. It's hard to give up a good tailwind. Mechanicals
wasn't too bad. I had 3 flats.
Okay.
One of them was a double flat.
Okay.
The 20 miles outside of Fargo, which was an ideal time to have it because I found the best bike shop on the whole trip in Fargo, and they replaced both my tires and set them up tubeless, and so I had that double flat, which I was able to plug my tires and keep going.
Wait. What kind of bike were you on?
I was on a 7 gravel bike. It's a 7 Evergreen SL that I actually had built by 7 for this trip.
Oh, really? Mm-hmm. Nice.
Yeah. It was my retirement gift. To myself. It was like, this is the bike
you earned it
that I've earned that I'm going to ride across the country. And so I set it up, spec wise. To be compatible with the conditions I was going to face.
But it was set up tubeless. It was already
tubeless.
It was tubeless when you were out, right? Okay.
Set up tubeless. The other probably the biggest issue I had was the bike has electronic shifting.
Ooh, okay.
So, which I love.
Yeah.
Until it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Because there's really nothing. There's not much you can do. With a cable bike, you can pick up the chain and kind of move it around.
Move into the gear, yeah.
But you really can't do that with the Di2 shifting. And so there was one day in Montana, the first time it went out, I was stuck in my small ring for about 3 days. which wasn't terrible because there was a lot of climbing. So I mean I got through it.
Yeah.
But once I got to Whitefish, they were able to get me going again.
Oh, good.
But then twice more in New York, in Adirondacks, and in Vermont in the Green Mountains, it went out, and I actually had to cut my wire.
Okay.
And resplice it. You know, I had electrical tape with me, and I had no idea what I was doing, but I knew this wire had to go here, and you know, the only thing I know how to do is cut the wire, splice it.
Yeah.
And
And
you know,
hopefully
I called my bike shop.
Yeah.
You know, I called Brian at Conti's and said, "What do I do?" And he tried to talk me through it. And to make a long story short, I got the bike going every time.
Yeah.
But there was some pain involved with figuring it out, and then I ended up having to do a 15-mile climb in the Green Mountains in my big ring.
Yeah.
Which really hurt.
Oh, okay. So more than just like the battery died, apparently.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
I have electronic shifting. I'm hoping I don't have to deal with that.
Right.
Kind of thing.
So you know, electronic shifting is great.
Yep.
But you know, I did question whether if I ever did anything like this again, whether I would want electronic shifting.
Right.
That's a debate. I mean, it's great when it works, but when it's not working, it's not so great. In the bike shops you're going to encounter, at least on the route that I was, there's very few bike shops that, you know, if you say electronic shifting, you know, they're going to go,
Yeah.
not here.
Yeah.
You know, we can patch a tire for you, or we can do this or that, or put a new cable in, but no thanks. You know,
Right. You can't.
we've never even seen it.
Oh,
You know,
okay.
you know, some of these small town bike shops.
Oh, well, that sucks.
But other than that, that was it. You
Yeah.
know, I had very little problem
Okay.
for as many miles as I rode.
Well, that's still pretty. I mean, it's flats, mechanical issues, really bad weather occasionally.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But it's, you know, I mean, I ended up riding 4,800 miles.
Yep.
And you know, just think, you know, in a regular year, if you ride 4,800 miles, you're going to take your bike to the bike shop a couple times to deal with those type of problems.
Sure. It's a lot of miles.
Anyway, so I felt very fortunate.
Yeah.
That I didn't have any serious problems.
Did you take chain lube with you?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. I lube my chain almost every day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Nice.
Because my bike basically lived outside. I mean,
Right.
I mean,
yeah.
think about
That's
like,
right. It's getting
like it was getting rained on night after night, day
close
after
to
day.
the weather. Yeah.
Like it's just like leaving your bike outside for 2 months.
How much do you recall? How much your bike weighed?
Really,
the question is,
yeah,
how much all your stuff weighed,
right.
your non-bikes,
So,
and like how much all that kind of, how much extra
So
weight you had?
total, so I weighed it on one of my shakeout trips, and I think it was about 68 to 70 pounds.
With all the stuff on
the whole thing. Yeah. So my bike's probably 22, 23, and then there. But then also I did in Montana, once I got through the big mountain passes of Washington and all the snow and all the cold weather, I did send stuff home.
Yeah.
I sent you know, in fact I sent like 8.35 pounds.
Yeah.
Of stuff home. You know, heavier gloves.
Yeah.
Hats. You know, extra layers.
Mm-hmm.
I had a pair of sandals, you know, that I wore that I said I'm going to send this home to. I sent home everything I could send home, you know, and then I just ended up, you know, having my bike shoes were the only shoes I had.
Oh, really?
Yep. The whole time.
Like, okay, because I have a question, because I hope to do some bike packing myself.
Right.
Like, were these the bike shoes that you would use on a normal gravel ride with super stiff soles?
Yes.
Oh,
Yep.
wow.
Yeah, but you know, I bought a pair of I think they're CDs, but they're black. They don't look like regular shoes, but they also don't really look like biking shoes.
Okay.
I mean, you know, and so they almost looked mainstream.
Okay.
And they were really comfortable.
Okay.
And so I felt great just riding in them all day, and
you still had
one,
for
and
most of the day.
then going to dinner and hanging out in them.
Wow. Okay. That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. That's a ultimate test of a shoe, 4,800 miles.
Right.
Right. Just those pairs.
But you learn on a trip like this, less is more. I mean, you have to have a certain amount of stuff.
Yeah.
To get by and to get through, but you don't want anything more than that. I mean, less is more. The less stuff you have. I had 2 T-shirts.
Yeah.
Well, I had 2 shirts, merino wool shirts that I rode in, a yellow one and a blue one, and then I had a black one that was my going out shirt.
Yeah.
I had 2 pair of shorts. I had 2 pair of socks, 1 pair of shoes, 1 light jacket, 1 super lightweight pair of pants, and then a rain jacket and a rain pants, and that was about it. I mean, and you learn you just don't need a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And that merino wool stuff is gold because it really doesn't keep any odors, and so you can ride in the same shirt for 4 days. Yeah. And I couldn't smell it.
Yeah. Okay.
Maybe people around me could, but I thought I smell pretty good right now.
There's a chance, right. But the people were still nice to you, so it could have been that bad.
That's right.
I've considered some merino wool stuff, but I think I would need to see it in action.
It's great.
Like material. Brantley also, after doing one of his long ride, right. I think he also was like, you should get a merino wool jersey or something like that.
It's great. And so I had 2 pair of socks, and the merino wool socks were gold.
Yeah.
Because you could literally wear the same socks for days, and they would be laying next to your face in the tent, and you're like, I can't even smell these things. I mean, it's an amazing fabric.
I will have to look into it more.
Plus, it dries fast.
Yeah.
It's great.
Great material. Okay.
Yeah. I didn't know about merino wool until this trip. Until I started watching some of his YouTube videos. It's like, okay.
I think wool is misleading in the name.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think that's when I first heard, I was like, I'm not going to wear something wool while riding.
Yeah.
But apparently there's something different about that fabric,
right,
or how it operates.
Yeah.
So those are adversities that you went over some adversities in your trip. How many days for the whole trip?
The total days from beginning to end was 72.
Okay.
Total riding days was 65.
Okay.
So, but I spent 3 days in Minnesota with family.
Okay.
I've got cousins in Minnesota, which is perfect because it was almost halfway, and so I got to Minnesota and I spent time with my cousins, and they made all these homemade pies and
nice.
Great dinners, and I got to sleep good. And Cindy flew up, and I got to see her for a couple days.
Yeah.
And so it was really nice spending time with family for 3 days.
Yeah.
But so other than that, it was 65 days of riding and 3 rest days in there, plus the 3 in Minnesota.
Okay.
Kind of the halftime.
Yeah.
Rest.
How well did you sleep?
Great.
Generally,
Fantastic.
most nights. Wait. Like when you were out on the road, you still slept. Like in the tent, you still slept pretty well.
I loved crawling in my tent every night. I
Yeah.
was so tired, and it's and I did end up staying in a hotel a few times.
Yeah.
Especially when it was raining, and then there's an app called Warm Showers.
Yep.
And so when I got east, and because things get more complicated when you get east, because you just can't camp anywhere, and out west you can do anything you want.
Right.
No
it's
one,
more open.
No one will bother you. So I stayed in Warm Showers with hosts 6 times. Twice I camped in their yards, and then 4 times I was in their houses.
But for people listening and also for my benefit, can you explain the warm showers?
Yeah, it's the first time I'd ever used it too. Again, this was part of my research, It's an app that it's basically cyclist helping cyclist. It's so you can sign up to be a host on warm showers,
Yep.
or you can just use the app looking for hosts, and it's really great because the people who are who agree to be hosts, they're typically bike riders. They're cyclists. A lot of them are touring cyclists. They just want to meet people that are doing the stuff that they like to do.
Yeah.
They wanted to hear about my trip
Yeah.
and my experience, and it was great because I got to hear about theirs too. And you swap all these stories. It's just like-minded people.
Yeah.
But it's all free, and you just message them a day or two in advance. Sometimes I'd message them the same day, like I'm 4 hours. I think I'm about 4 hours from you. Is there any possibility that you can host me?
Yeah.
And they'll message you back, and sometimes they'd say, yeah, come on, or sometimes they say, no, it's we're out of town or whatever.
Yeah.
But I had great experiences with warm showers hosts. But what I started to say was, so I had the warm showers accommodations and some hotel, but my tent was always my favorite place to be.
Yeah.
And I always slept the best because it becomes like your little cocoon. It's like at the end of the day, it's like you crawl in, you got your sleeping bag, and it's normally in a pretty cool place.
Yeah.
Because it's normally in a very scenic place, on the water, and it's just like this is really cool.
Yeah.
And you crawl in, and and I carried like a little speaker with me, like a little Bluetooth speaker.
Yeah.
Which might have been the most valuable piece of equipment I took, because that really helps. When you're by yourself, having some music.
Yeah.
When you're setting up your tent or laying in your tent at night listening to music.
Yeah.
Is just like it was great.
Yeah.
And it was. I wouldn't go anywhere without that speaker now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm glad you had some music to listen to. And you didn't. So music, you didn't like, let me hear the news or anything like.
No.
Yeah. Okay.
No, it was all Spotify.
Yeah.
Just playlists, and once or twice, maybe 3 times, I listen to music on the bike. Like at the end of the day, if there was 20 miles left, I'd take my speaker out and pop it in my little handlebar holder, and I'd crank some music, just kind of a celebration, especially if there were hills to go, and it just kind of helps you get through. But I found, I found that I really preferred not to listen to music on the bike.
Okay.
Just because it was almost a distraction.
Yeah.
And I prefer just being more aware of the sights and the sounds around me.
Right. Okay. So I'm glad you had some tunes.
While
you were out there.
Yeah.
You don't
essential.
Right. You don't think about how good it is to kind of listen to music. It's like, oh, I haven't listened to music in a while.
Right.
Kind of thing.
Yeah.
Particularly with I don't say nothing else going on, but were there any other parts, like things that you took where like, oh, I'm so glad I brought this piece of this thing, or was there anything else that kind of seemed like just like a really awesome piece of equipment that you had with you? I mean, clearly other than just like the bike itself. It's like, this really came in handy, and I wasn't thinking how much I was going to appreciate this thing.
Right.
And,
the speaker was definitely the top.
Yeah.
What else was key?
And maybe not. Maybe the speaker was like ended up being the most important thing on the trip.
No question. The other thing we talked about it already, but the merino wool. I can't stress enough. Is that was such a massive factor.
Yeah.
The other thing probably that I appreciated every single day, or most every day, was my sleeping pad.
Yeah.
I got a Thermarest. Again, this was after great research. I researched every piece of equipment down to the nth degree, and I got a Thermarest pad.
Yeah.
And that thing was great.
Yeah.
And it, when you blow a little air into it, it's about maybe 3/4 of an inch. But boy, I'd lay down on that thing every night and just this is like super comfortable.
Yeah.
And
You're off your feet.
I appreciated that. Like that would definitely be the second after my speaker.
Okay. Did you? How tall are you?
6'7".
6'7". Did you get the regular? Did you get the? Was there like a large size?
Yeah, large.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
Long. Yeah.
Right.
I had an extra long sleeping bag.
Okay.
By enlightened equipment made.
Okay.
So yeah, everything was taller.
Okay.
Which is great. And I had a big Agnes tent.
Okay.
Which is a great tent. I had the copper spur
Yep.
tent,
I've seen that
which is a great bike packing tent.
Yeah.
Superb.
Yeah, because they have a the copper spur. Oh God! And there's two others that they have call it a regular version, lightweight,
Right.
But then there's a bike packing version.
Right. Yeah, and the pole, and that's really good because the poles on the bike packing, are really short. They're like maybe, maybe 10 inches, but it's super compact.
Yeah.
Super easy to put up, and can withstand a hurricane.
apparently so. Like that's the ad. Yeah.
Right.
Where'd you put the bike? Like the tent? Where'd you have that stashed on the bike?
I had that on the front. So I had a Revelet design sweet roll bag on the front of my handlebar. So all my clothes were on the front.
Okay.
And then I had my tent hanging off in front of that.
Okay.
And then in the back I had a seat tube bag that my sleeping bag, my sleeping bag, my long pants, my puffy jacket went in that, and then my Thermarest pad was on top of that.
Okay.
And then I had a frame bag.
Okay.
I had a custom frame bag made that fit my frame.
Okay.
That all my other, all my wires and first aid kit and everything else, sunscreen, tools, all that stuff went
Did
there.
you have? Did it take up the whole triangle?
Mm-hmm, the whole triangle.
Okay.
But yeah, I've got a big bike, so it was a big bag, and so it was
huge,
great.
Yeah.
And that bike packing setup was really great because I saw a lot of bike tours coming across the country going both ways. I talked to a lot of them. Everybody's got the panniers.
Yeah.
The mostly the Ortlieb panniers, front and back.
Yep.
And I had more of a kind of a bike packing, kind of almost an off-road bike packing design.
Yeah.
But boy, I could ride so much faster than they could because I was much more aerodynamic than they were with my frame bag, with my seat bag going off the back.
Yeah.
I was much more sleek, going through, than they were.
Okay.
It's a great bike packing setup.
And I still have to figure out mine. Well, when this potential bike packing happens, I still have to figure out like what's the best setup for me to use on my bike at some point. So I may call you about such things.
Yeah.
What would you want to share about like if someone's like interested in doing it, like a similar like a ride across country? Like what's some of the tips what's some of the stuff you want to share about like if someone else is showing like an interest in doing a cross country ride,
right,
kind of thing?
Well, I think learn as much as you can before you go. Having good maps is critical. I think it. Just deciding to do it is the biggest thing. Just making the decision this is something you want to do, and then just being open to, just being open to the experience.
Yeah.
I think that's probably the biggest part of it. Once you start is you just have to, just take it as it comes, and you have to leave all your expectations behind in terms of, your mileage, your distance, because you just don't know what's coming. But that ends up being the beauty of it, the spontaneity and going into the unknown. And, you may think you're going to get 70 miles in and you end up getting 30. Yeah. I got 30 one day.
Yeah.
Just because I had terrible headwinds. It was 106 degrees. And the flies were biting me all day. It was horrible.
Yeah.
But I just said, I can't, I can't ride anymore today.
Yeah.
So, but just having that kind of mindset that whatever comes is
you'll deal with it,
is good.
Yeah.
But I think talking to people, I talked to several people that had done trips like this.
Yeah.
And learn from them. Like I said, YouTube is invaluable.
Yeah.
You can learn so much by watching those videos.
Yeah.
And then just enjoying it, just having fun. That was the like every day was just an adventure.
Yeah.
And it was just a magical adventure every single day.
Yeah, and I mean, no, that is amazing. I think about the few days that I get to go, not the few days I get to go ride, but the days like I know I've got to ride today and I've got to ride tomorrow, and like there's nothing else I need to do,
right.
kind of thing, and just expanding that out for just like a month, kind of thing.
Well, the other thing, Trey, is I wasn't sure how it was going to go for me physically.
Yeah.
Because I'm not a young guy. I turn 63 next month, and I've done a lot of riding, but this is a different deal. And so I wasn't sure whether I was going to be laying in a ditch after 2 weeks. Just looking for a escape hatch.
Yeah.
But the experience was so good, and my body adapted incredibly well. And I got in like the last, like after Minnesota, like the first week or two, I had a saddle sore, which I'd never had before. Yeah. And that hurt for a good 6 days to get through that. And then my legs, were sore getting through all the mountains. But once I got past Minnesota, and had that 3-day rest with my family, I think I rode 21 straight days after that. Yeah. And I think I did like 1,900 miles. So I was doing nearly a century a day. Yeah. And I could have done, I'd get to the end of 120, 130 mile day. Yeah. And my legs didn't even hurt. Yeah. And I'd never experienced anything like that. Yeah. Like never. And it was like, boy, I could do another 50 miles. And I'd never experienced anything like that. But your body adapts and that was a huge surprise.
How much weight did you lose?
Not much.
Really?
Not much. Maybe 5 pounds.
Really? Wow.
Because I ate burgers every night and I drank beer every night. And there were only 2 nights that I didn't drink beer, and both of those nights really pissed me off. Because I couldn't, it just wasn't available. Yeah. But it, me and my buddies, have always equated, bike riding and drinking beer as 2 of the best things in the world. Ben Franklin had a quote he said, beer is proof that God loves us and wants us to be happy. And, and I believe that. And but it was very special for me every day to end at a bar or cafe, because that's where I was most of the time. There was one bar or cafe. I'd go in to the sit down at the bar with 5 or 6 other cowboys. Yeah. And order a beer, and it's like, oh, this is heaven. Yeah. And so many times, I'd start talking to them, and so many times, they would buy my beers, they'd buy my dinner. That happened all the time. Yeah. They just said, what you're doing is pretty cool. You're not spending a dime here. So, we got you.
Nice.
So
Nice.
So really cool. But I ate pastries and donuts and Snickers and like I ate everything I wanted to eat.
So
the whole way across.
You weren't shy of calories or anything.
No, I wasn't shy of calories at all. I figured I was burning about 6,000 calories a day, and I felt great every day.
Yeah.
Eating whatever I wanted to eat and drinking whatever I wanted to. I had 2 or 3 beers every night. It was like, this is awesome.
Yeah, I mean, if you're burning that many calories on a regular basis, as you said, your body's just like, I'm going to burn this too. Yeah, I'm going to use this as fuel.
The challenge is when you get home.
Right.
You can't do that. It's like, oh man, this sucks.
When you got home, right? Was there something like, I really want to eat this? Like, I assume you had a beer or beverage, right?
Well, the sweets, and I've got a sweet tooth.
Yeah.
And so donuts and pastries and pie, because I'd have a big piece of pie, for lunch or dinner, and it was like, I didn't think twice. But when you get home, you can't do that.
Yeah. You have to go on another long ride again.
That's right.
So I can have pie.
And that alone is a good reason to do a ride like this.
You can justify all the pie and donuts that you want.
That's right.
I would be eating pancakes all the time. That would be my Achilles heel. So I will keep all that in mind or I should say, hopefully people keep that in mind if they're thinking of doing a similar trip. And it sounds like you would do it again.
Oh, I would do it again.
Yeah.
It was the greatest. I mean, other than my family, and it's the greatest thing I've ever done.
Yeah.
And I would lay in my tent at night just saying the same thing, like, this is the best thing I've ever done in my life. And I still think about it all the time.
Yeah.
And the weird thing is, and it's a great thing, is recovering from this hip surgery. I've laid awake a lot at night, not being able to sleep.
Yeah.
And I've thought a lot about this trip, and I can see it so vividly in my brain. Mm-hmm. I can see the people's faces. I can see the towns that I went through, and I can see the restaurants that I was in, and the campsites that I had, and it's still so vivid and rich in my memory, and I hope it stays that way, because it's just such a great gift to think of that ride, like that, and so that's really cool.
Yeah. And I'm glad you got to have that moment. It's clearly awesome riding, right? But anytime somebody can have a thing that's just like, that was just a special moment, special time, and to be able to relive it, for yourself, right? That is, I'm glad that you're able to still do that.
One of the coolest moments was, the executive director of Sportable is Hunter Lehman, and so. And he's a Randolph-Macon guy like I am, and really great guy. And the organization's great. And Cindy, my wife, at the time was the director of development for Sportable.
Okay.
And so she and the Sportable team, we turned this into a fundraiser, and they really did a superb job. Created a website. I had business cards. That I handed out all across the country. Yeah. I posted every day on Instagram. My kids taught me how to do that, and the followers kept going up. But Hunter came up and rode the last 50 miles because once I got to Bar Harbor, I rode 300 miles down to Boston. Yeah. Because Seven, the bike manufacturer that built my bike, they were in Watertown, just outside of Boston, and so I finished at their plant. Okay. And they had a champagne and ice cream party for me when I arrived. Nice. And all the people that built my bike, all the craftsmen, the painters, the welders, they all came out, and participated in this big party, and they saw the bike, and they asked me how it handled, and it was really cool. But we rode into Boston that day, having finished the 4,800 miles,
Yeah.
and with a total fundraising of $144,000 to Sportable. So that made it just
That's
like,
awesome.
like this is the best.
Yeah.
You know, and I'd set a goal of $100,000, which a lot of people said that's a big goal.
Yeah.
And I said it's a big goal, but we ended up just really having great success, and a lot of my biking buddies and a lot of people
Yeah.
followed me and contributed to that success, and so it's just a blessing to have a ride like that, to experience that, and to contribute to such a great organization that really helps a lot of people.
Yeah. I'm glad you had the support.
Yeah.
But also that you were able to use that adventure to the benefit of others.
Right.
Right. You have this
Yeah.
awesome.
That's what
memory.
made it really,
Right.
really special.
Yeah.
I mean, the ride is great, but if you can take the ride and make it bigger than yourself, where it will help other people down the road, that takes it to a whole nother level.
That's great. I'm sure it's really Sportable is clearly grateful. I'm certain of that. That's fantastic. Thank you. And that's the story of the ride. This is completely off subject. What is your middle name? Because I skipped it.
Oh, Thomas.
Thomas.
Thomas,
Okay.
named after my wonderful dad.
Okay.
His name was Thomas.
I realized like halfway in, I did not ask your middle name, and that is like my
Right.
terrible segue into like I just like
Uh-huh.
icebreaker. Let me ask your middle. And I
Right.
did not ask. Thank you for
Yeah.
telling me, Thomas.
Yeah.
Do you have any more bike packing planned
Yeah.
with the
So-
Cooper, right?
Yeah, with Cooper, yeah.
Okay.
But now that I've invested in all the,
Right, you got all the
I've got
equipment.
all the stuff.
Yeah.
Like I know how to pack my bike.
Yeah.
I've got the tent. I've got the bags. I've got 2 bins in my garage with all my merino wool clothes. Like
Yeah.
like I could go home now, and within 2 hours I could have that bike packed up and ready to go.
Yeah.
And so that's the other thing is once you educate yourself as to what you need, you get your gear, then it's going to be easy to go now.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be looking for every chance I get. And,
Okay.
and my goal this year really is to I've identified quite a number of rails to trails,
Okay.
and that's what I want to do this year.
Okay.
And a lot of them will be overnight.
Okay.
And so I'm going to be doing a lot of bike packing on rails to trails this year.
Okay.
Some with Cooper and some not. Some with other buddies, and
Okay.
Cindy will go with me on some, and hopefully I can convince some of our buddies to go with me too.
Okay. I'm glad that you already mentioned Cooper. I'm glad that the I'm gonna call it the colossal Trans-American trip didn't drive your interest in like doing the easy bike packing, the 1-2 day bike packing kind of thing, right?
Not at all.
Okay.
Not at all. And I do think I want to do another big epic trip.
Yeah.
Somewhere, like multi-week.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I haven't pinned that down yet.
Yeah.
But traveling by bike
Mm-hmm.
is a phenomenal experience.
Yeah.
And because you learn a lot about yourself,
Mm-hmm.
and you learn a lot about life.
Yeah.
At the same time, and you're living outside basically.
Yeah.
And it's a great experience. And so, yeah, it's how I want to live, going
Mhm.
forward.
Okay. I think I have to get over the living outside portion. That's the like.
I gave a talk when I got back.
Yeah.
And I put up. There was a slide that said the elements, and it was the wind, the snow, and heat, and bugs, and I said, and I asked, I said, what do you think the hardest or the toughest element was? And so they all guessed.
Mm-hmm.
What would you think the toughest element would be?
I mean,
From beginning to end, the natural element.
I want to go with the wind.
Bugs.
Really?
Bugs.
Yeah.
Man. I had a pack of. I mean, there were bugs from especially when you get. But I was around a lot of water.
Yeah.
From North Dakota all the way to Maine. But I had a pack of probably 60 to 70 horseflies buzz my head for at least 50 miles one day. And they didn't bite me, but they were in my face. And mosquitoes, I saw mosquitoes as big as, bluebirds in Canada. And,
oh, man.
And, I mean, I would set my tent up swatting mosquitoes, and
man,
it was. But deer flies and horse flies and gnats and mosquitoes, and it was constant.
Bugs.
Yeah.
Great. Now another thing to concern about. But I'm aware there's bugs outside.
Right.
And that is I need to sleep in my tent, which I have a tent now. I've not slept in it or even been in it. But I think that's a hurdle I need to get over of just, do I feel safe in my tent from, are bugs going to crawl into this thing?
Right.
But again, I need to do some shakeout stuff when it gets warmer.
Yeah.
But either way, thank you for reminding me that bugs are now an ongoing concern outside of wind and rain.
Yeah. In fact, my rain suit that I've talked about, I use my rain suit more for bugs than I did for rain.
Really?
Yeah. Because I'd get to, especially in Minnesota and North Dakota and Wisconsin and Michigan, there's so many mosquitoes that I'd get to my camp site and I'd immediately
put this thing on,
put on my rain suit, so the mosquitoes couldn't
bite you.
chew me up.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
But I also, there are some people mosquitoes like more than others, and I'm one of those people.
Yeah.
People, I've always thought people invited me to picnics just because
you'd attract
just
them.
because, I'm like the bug zapper, take this hot dog and go over there and enjoy yourself.
You have a skill.
Right.
What else would you like to share about your riding? Let's go with that. Just in general, like clearly you've done the epic thing, but like other things about your experience in general.
Riding, riding bikes for me in my life has been a real blessing. Not just because it's helped me keep healthy and fit and motivated, but it's people. Like with RABA and group rides, and your riding buddies are what makes bike riding the best.
Yeah.
Riding with people and the friendships you develop, and the Yellow Jersey Century I talked about before. I met so many people through that ride that have become lifelong friends.
Yeah.
And everywhere I go on every ride, there's people that I know and have ridden with, and that's the best part. Is just riding bikes brings you relationships, lifelong relationships that are really close.
Yeah.
And there's something about people that ride bikes that everybody feels how we're also happy when we're on bikes, but when we're together, we're even happier.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's been the best part of. The bike has kept me motivated. It's taken me to amazing places all around the country and the world. But it's the people that I've ridden with and have met and are still the closest friends today that have made it exceptionally a great experience.
Awesome. I'm glad that you've clearly been enjoying your time riding and will continue to enjoy your time riding.
Yep. Yeah, I don't plan on ever stopping.
Well, Dan, I'd like to thank you for coming and sharing your story and the epic rides and give me a new fear of bugs while camping.
I could talk about this all day. Yeah, I love it.
And so thank you for your time. Thank you for doing the fundraising and helping contributing to Sportable. So that's awesome, man. I thank you for your time, man. And,
I thank you too. I thank you for what you're doing with this podcast. I know it's time consuming for you, but to get stories. I've been listening to your podcast.
Yeah.
Some of the episodes. I know a lot of the folks you've talked to.
Yeah.
And and I'm learning a lot. But thank you for being such an advocate for cycling, in this region.
Well, I enjoy the chat, so it's going well. It's a labor of love at this point. But thank you, Dan, and I appreciate your time.
Great.